If you have spent any time searching for the best diet to protect your heart after 60, you already know the problem. One website says keto, the next one says Mediterranean. Your neighbor swears by plant-based. Your brother-in-law has been eating nothing but steak and eggs for 2 years and claims he has never felt better. Every camp has studies. Every camp is convinced they have cracked the code. And you are standing in your kitchen wondering which one of them is actually going to keep you alive. What if I told you that none of them are the answer? And also, all of them could be. I am Dr. George. I have spent years studying what actually builds plaque inside arteries and what stops it. Not the theories, not the marketing, the mechanisms. And here is what I have learned that changed how I think about this entirely. There is no single named diet that cleans your arteries. There are 3 specific criteria that any diet must meet to do the job. Hit all 3, and your arteries begin to heal, regardless of what you call your eating pattern. Miss even one, and it does not matter how clean the label sounds. The damage continues. Here is what those 3 criteria are. First, the diet must not spike your blood sugar past a specific threshold that triggers arterial damage, and your annual blood work is not catching this. Second, it must actively keep inflammation low. Not just avoid the obvious junk, but stop the quiet daily irritation that most people have no idea they are causing. Third, and this is the one that nobody talks about, it must deliver enough protein to protect the muscle mass that your body depends on to clear sugar from your blood after every single meal. Lose that muscle, and your blood sugar control collapses no matter what you eat. We are going to go through each one. I will show you the mechanism behind it, what it looks like on a real plate, and how to verify it is actually working in your own body. Not guessing. Measuring. But first, let me tell you about a man named Raymond. 69 years old, retired plumber from outside Philadelphia. His cholesterol had been managed for 4 straight years. His doctor called his numbers solid. Then a coronary calcium scan told a completely different story. Significant plaque buildup in arteries that on paper should have been clean. Raymond looked at me and said, "I cut the fat. I bought the margarine. I did 30 years of what they told me. How is this here?" I hear that question almost every week. And the answer, every single time, comes back to these 3 criteria. Raymond was failing 2 of them and had no idea. What happened to his numbers 8 months later is something I will share with you before this video ends. Now. Criterion 1. Your diet must keep your blood sugar below the damage threshold. There is a number I want you to remember, 140 milligrams per deciliter. That is the line. Every time your blood sugar crosses it after a meal and stays elevated, a very specific process begins inside your artery walls. The delicate inner lining of your blood vessels, what we call the endothelium, starts to take damage. Not dramatic damage, not something you feel. A quiet chemical irritation that triggers an inflammatory response. And that inflammatory response is what builds plaque. Not fat, not cholesterol floating through your blood looking for a wall to stick to. That image, the one most of us grew up with, is incomplete at best. Cholesterol is often just a passenger caught at the scene. The actual crime is the repeated blood sugar spike that damages the wall in the first place, creating the rough, inflamed surface where plaque begins to accumulate. Raymond's fasting blood sugar was 96, perfectly normal. His doctor looked at that number every year and said everything was fine. But Raymond was eating toast with jam every morning and a sandwich with a generous helping of bread every afternoon. After those meals, his blood sugar was hitting 170, 180, sometimes higher. 2 hours later, it would come back down. By the next morning, his fasting number looked clean again. The damage was happening in those invisible hours after meals. Twice a day, every day, for years. And nobody was checking. Because the standard annual blood work only captures the fasting number, the overnight number, the number that tells you almost nothing about what is happening to your artery walls in real time. Have you ever checked your blood sugar 30 minutes after a meal? Most people never have. And honestly, I understand why. Nobody told you to. Your doctor checks the fasting number, maybe your A1C, and if those look acceptable, you get a handshake and a see you next year. But the post-meal spike is where the arterial damage actually lives. Here is how to see it for yourself. A basic glucometer from any pharmacy costs under $20. Check 30 minutes after eating, then again at 2 hours. If you are crossing 140 at that first check and still above 120 at the second, your meals are doing damage that your annual labs will never reveal. If you want a more complete picture, a continuous glucose monitor, a small sensor you wear on your arm, tracks your blood sugar around the clock. You will see exactly what every meal does to your numbers in real time. The first time you wear one, I promise you, it will change how you think about food permanently. Raymond got a CGM 3 days after our first meeting. When he saw what his morning toast was doing to his blood sugar, he told me he felt like he had been lied to for 30 years. He had not been lied to. He had been incompletely informed. There is a difference, and it matters. Now, Criterion 2. Your diet must actively keep inflammation low. This one goes beyond avoiding the obvious culprits. Everyone knows that deep-fried food and drive-through meals are not doing your arteries any favors. That is not what I am talking about. I am talking about the foods that feel responsible. The ones with health claims on the packaging, the ones you buy because you are trying to do the right thing. Whole grain bread, flavored yogurt, granola bars with a heart-healthy stamp on the front, orange juice that says 100% natural. These products live in the grocery carts of people who are genuinely trying to protect their health, and many of them are quietly fueling the exact low-grade chronic inflammation that drives arterial plaque, year after year. Here is the mechanism. When you eat highly processed carbohydrates, even ones marketed as whole grain or heart-healthy, they break down rapidly into glucose. That rapid breakdown spikes your blood sugar, which we already covered, but it also triggers something else. Your body releases inflammatory markers. C-reactive protein rises. Interleukin-6 increases. These are the chemical signals of a body under low-level attack. Not enough to make you feel sick. Just enough to keep your artery walls in a constant state of mild irritation. A meta-analysis of 22 studies found that people who consumed the most ultra-processed food had a 17% higher risk of cardiovascular disease and a 23% higher risk of coronary artery disease compared to those who ate the least. Those are not small numbers, and they represent the accumulated cost of thousands of meals that felt healthy, but were working against the very arteries they were supposed to protect. I will tell you something personal here. For years I ate a lot of bread, not fast food bread, good bread. The kind you buy at a bakery because it feels like a real, wholesome choice. Sourdough, multigrain loaves with seeds on top. I genuinely believed it was a neutral food at worst, and probably beneficial. When I finally tested what it was doing to my own blood sugar and my own inflammatory markers, I was genuinely surprised. Not alarmed. Surprised. Because the gap between what I assumed and what was actually happening inside my body was wider than I expected. That is not a confession. That is a reality check that I think every person over 60 deserves to hear. The information changes. The science moves forward. And sometimes the foods we trusted for decades turn out to need a second look. So what does a low-inflammation plate actually look like? It looks like food your grandmother would recognize without reading the back of a package. Non-starchy vegetables, quality protein, healthy fats from sources like extra virgin olive oil, avocados, nuts, and fatty fish. It looks like spinach and arugula and bell peppers and cherry tomatoes. It looks like salmon with roasted broccoli drizzled in olive oil. The good kind. The kind that has a slight peppery bite at the back of your throat when you taste it straight. It does not look like a box with a health claim on the front and 17 ingredients on the back, 12 of which you cannot pronounce. The rule is simple. If it comes in a package with a long ingredient list, read that list. If you find added sugar in any form, industrial seed oils like soybean or canola or sunflower, or more than 5 total ingredients, put it back. 9 times out of 10, something in that list is working against your arteries. Now, Criterion 3. And this is the one that most diets never mention, most doctors never bring up, and most people over 60 have never once considered, in the context of their arteries. Your diet must deliver enough protein to protect your muscle. I know what you are thinking. Muscle? I thought we were talking about arteries. We are. And the connection between the two is one of the most important things I will ever explain to you. Your skeletal muscle is the single largest insulin-sensitive tissue in your entire body. Every time you eat, your muscles absorb a large portion of the glucose from that meal and store it safely. They are your body's primary blood sugar disposal system. Think of your muscles like sponges sitting in a bathtub. When the water rises, the sponges soak it up before it overflows. That is what healthy muscle does with glucose. Now think about what happens when those sponges shrink. After 60, your body loses muscle mass naturally. The clinical term is sarcopenia. It happens to everyone to some degree, but it accelerates dramatically if your protein intake is insufficient. And here's the feedback loop that almost nobody explains. Less muscle means less glucose absorption after meals. Less glucose absorption means higher blood sugar spikes. Higher spikes mean more arterial damage. More arterial damage means more plaque. And meanwhile, the high blood sugar itself further impairs muscle protein synthesis, which means you lose muscle even faster. It is a spiral, and it is completely silent. You do not feel sarcopenia happening. You just notice one day that the grocery bags feel heavier, or that getting out of a low chair takes a little more effort than it used to, or that your fasting blood sugar has crept up 5 points for no obvious reason. The reason is obvious. You just were never told to look for it. Research published in the Journal of the American Medical Directors Association found that adults over 60 need significantly more protein than younger adults to maintain muscle mass. The current general recommendation of 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight is increasingly considered inadequate for older adults. Multiple studies now suggest that 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram is the range needed to genuinely protect against age-related muscle loss. For a person weighing 160 pounds, that is roughly 87 to 116 grams of protein per day. Most seniors I speak with are getting somewhere between 40 and 60. They are running at half capacity and wondering why their blood sugar keeps climbing despite eating less. Raymond was getting about 50 grams a day. He had cut back on meat years ago because he had been told it was bad for his heart. He replaced it with bread, pasta, and rice, foods that felt safe, foods that kept his cholesterol panel looking reasonable, while quietly starving his muscles of the raw material they needed to do their job. So what does adequate protein actually look like on a plate? Let me give you 2 real meals that hit all 3 criteria simultaneously. No guesswork, no label reading, just food. First meal, late morning. 3 whole eggs cooked in butter or olive oil. If you like sardines, add a few on the side. If you do not, a piece of salmon works identically. Then a large salad. Not a sad little side salad with 2 leaves of lettuce. A real one. Spinach, arugula, red cabbage, cherry tomatoes, radish, olives, a quarter of an avocado, a handful of pumpkin seeds. Dress it with extra virgin olive oil and fresh lemon. That single meal gives you omega-3 fatty acids, B12, vitamin D, choline, and more micronutrients than most supplement bottles can deliver. Blood sugar stays flat, inflammation stays low. Protein is substantial. Second meal, late afternoon or early evening. A generous portion of quality protein, roughly 7 to 8 ounces. Steak, chicken thighs, salmon, whatever you enjoy. A large serving of non-starchy vegetables roasted in olive oil. Broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, Brussels sprouts. If you need more protein to hit your daily target, a small piece of cheese or a simple bone broth on the side. That is it. Between those 2 meals, you have kept blood sugar under 140, you have loaded your body with anti-inflammatory nutrients, and you have given your muscles more than enough protein to maintain the glucose-clearing capacity that everything else depends on. Now, I know some of you watching are vegetarian. I see you. I respect that completely. This framework does not require meat. Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, lentils, paneer, eggs if you eat them. These deliver the same protein signal. The 3 criteria do not care about the source. They care about the result. If your muscles are fed, your inflammation is low, and your blood sugar stays below the threshold. Your arteries are getting what they need. Whatever you want to call your diet after that is your business entirely. And here is something I want to say directly. Not as a content creator, as someone who has spent years watching people fight this battle. If you are sitting there right now wondering whether it is too late for you, whether the damage is already done, whether making changes at 65 or 70 or 78 even matters anymore, I want you to hear this clearly. Your arteries are remarkably responsive. I have seen inflammatory markers shift within weeks of dietary changes. I have seen post-meal blood sugar patterns transform in days. The body does not ask how old you are, it asks what you are giving it right now. Raymond started these changes the week after our first conversation. He did not overhaul everything overnight. He started with breakfast, eggs and vegetables instead of toast and jam. The following week, he added the salad at lunch. The week after that, he increased his protein at dinner. Small, steady, unglamorous adjustments. 8 months later, Raymond came back with new labs and a second calcium score. His post-meal blood sugars had not crossed 140 in over 5 months. His C-reactive protein, one of the primary markers of systemic inflammation, had dropped by more than 40%. And his coronary calcium score, the number that had frightened him into my office in the first place, had not progressed. In a man approaching 70, whose plaque had been building for years, stabilization like that is not a small result. His cardiologist called it the best response he had seen in a patient without a medication change. Raymond did not go keto. He did not go vegan. He did not follow any named protocol. He followed 3 criteria: blood sugar below 140, inflammation actively low, enough protein to protect the muscle that protects everything else. That is the diet that cleans arteries, not a brand, not a best-selling book. A framework you can verify with your own numbers and adjust for the rest of your life. Here is how to verify it is working in your body, not someone else's, yours. Get a glucometer or a continuous glucose monitor and check your post-meal numbers. Ask your doctor for hemoglobin A1C, fasting insulin, triglycerides, HDL, and C-reactive protein at your next blood work. If those numbers are moving in the right direction and staying there, then whatever you are eating is doing its job. You do not need anyone's permission to call it the right diet. Your labs will tell you. I have a question for you, and it is not a small one. If you were to check your blood sugar 30 minutes after dinner tonight, what do you think you would see? Have you ever tested it? Or has every number you have ever been given come from a fasting blood draw at 8 in the morning? When your body has had all night to bring things back to baseline, I ask because I think the answer might change what you do tomorrow morning. And I would genuinely like to know. Tell me in the comments what your usual breakfast looks like right now, because I read every single one. And sometimes the most important conversation starts with the simplest question. What are you eating first thing in the morning? Everything I have shared today is general educational information based on current medical research. It is not personal medical advice. Your situation is unique. Before making any changes to your diet or treatment plan, please speak with your physician. They know your history and your medications. That context always matters. Take care of your heart. It has been beating for you every second of your life, without asking for anything in return. The least we can do is feed it properly.